The Duquesne Dukes look to bounce back from an 0-2 start. They're going to have a chance to do that on the road against the DePaul Blue Demons. Hello and welcome into the Duquesne Sports Pregame Show. I'm Jack Morgan, alongside me Dylan Pfister. And Dylan, it's been a tough start for Duquesne. We'll jump right into it. What has went wrong for them in the first two games?
I don't think there's really been a clear, point of emphasis where the Dukes really need to hone in and fix up a problem on offense or defense. I think it really just has been a situation of a new roster, new guys coming in, and they're working the kinks out. You have some returners in the starting lineup, and you have some transfers as well. You have some old guys, you have some young guys. I think this is a Duquesne team that we know very well, you and I, Jack, takes some time to get going.
Yeah.
I think that the first two games for the Dukes has been more a product of that than anything, and I think that we're going to see some better play from them here on out.
Yeah. And that definitely starts with a game against DePaul. Kind of dig into them. They are a team that has had a lot of struggles in the past couple of years in the Big East. In fact, they didn't win a single Big East game last year. And they lost in the first round. Nova almost beat Nova for the record, but that's beside the point. They haven't won a Big East game in a while now, but they started out pretty hot in non-conference play. What is, just looking at them on paper and looking at how things have fared for them in the past year and a half, what does that tell you about this DePaul team?
Yeah, you're right, Jack. You really don't have to go far to see the disappointment that this DePaul team has kind of produced in the recent history. You just look at last season, as you pointed out, not a single conference victory for them, 0-20. I also want to point out that they were 0-11 on the road. They actually haven't won a road game since January of 23.
Oh, my goodness.
So it's been a while. It's almost been two full seasons for DePaul to not win on the road. That's bad. But you know what's not bad? That 3-0 record that you just mentioned. They're at a point now where they're averaging almost 90 points per game. They've really turned it around. They're shooting nearly 50% from the floor. Big turnaround, and you just compare the numbers to the Dukes. They're better in every category. Shooting, defensively, rebounding. This is a very good DePaul team that's going to give the Dukes a lot of trouble.
And Duquesne, we'll go back to them real quick and just talk, you just look at how they play in the first two games. A couple of guys that have excelled. A couple of guys that have had a little bit of trouble getting going, right? I mean, I think Corbett's had, he's still adjusting. He hasn't been bad. It's just he's having a tough time adjusting. Edwards obviously is still looking for a better shooting percentage with the ball. I think he's had a tough time getting it going. But you look at these guys that are struggling, and I'll say it, I think that they have a great track record of success at the prior places they had spent time with before Duquesne. And just want to kind of get your take on that. Is that fair to say that they've had that success, and it's right to be a little more patient with them, given it the first two games of kind of tough losses?
I definitely think that's a good point, Jack. I think there is some room for patience here. Back to my first answer about the problems with this team so far is that they haven't really had that kind of chemistry. So I could say a similar thing here for these guys. It just takes time, It's not going to get worked out in camp. This is a type of chemistry that you build over weeks of a season. But then there's also guys like Trey Dinkins who come out and look like they could be they could have been a starter day one. Obviously, we know Dinkins is still sitting on the bench and probably will be for the foreseeable future, at least the next couple games. But you have guys like Dinkins who come in and dominate, but you also have the Maximus Edwards who come in, get the start, and don't really produce necessarily as much as you were hoping for. But I don't think the numbers necessarily tell the story for Maximus Edwards. I was on the floor watching that game, and I think he put his team in a good position a lot of the time. I think he was asked to do a lot in his first game, and I think he necessarily didn't take the best shots. And I think that was apparent among everybody who watched. And for a guy that's been receiving a lot of negative attention, I don't really think it's warranted. These are guys that were put in a position day one to go out there and produce. And I think it's important to look at the positives as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think, obviously, the positive, we've talked about it on and off camera. Trey Dinkins, I think he's been very, very good for this Duquesne team. And I think he's a guy that you said, he's battling some injury in the offseason. They're kind of easing him back in here. Kareem Rozier, as well, I think is also a good player to focus on because I think he's been pretty good to start the year as well. Kind of look at Kareem Rozier. This is probably his best chance to fully take advantage of having a starting spot that is open for him to take. He's one of the few guys on this team that has had experience of more than a year of playing under Drew Joyce in some sort of capacity. So I think Kareem Rozier has been pretty impressive, don't you say?
I definitely would say so. And you're right. Off camera, we've talked a lot about this, Jack, specifically about Rozier and the progress that he's made each season. Obviously, he had some big shoes to fill last year, stepping into that starting role finally. And he didn't really make as much of an impact on this Duquesne team. He wasn't as much of a star as we had thought he might be. But I do think he's made even more steps this year that are going to take him down the road to being a solidified starter every week. I think Rozier's shooting has gotten better, and he had the double-double against Princeton. He's still contributing all around the board. So Kareem Rozier, definitely still a very key player for the Dukes.
Yeah, definitely. Let's go into our players to watch for both sides. We'll start with DePaul. And obviously, pretty good start to the year, but he's still got some demons from the past that they're still trying to exercise with Big East play. But they're going to have a chance here to go 4-0. How does that happen for them?
It happens for them with a big game from Isaiah Rivera. That's the fifth-year guard. He's got 10 three-pointers on the year already. Obviously, this is a Duquesne team that doesn't hit a lot of threes. He also had 25 points in the season opener, leads the team in scoring, 16 points a game, expecting another solid performance from Rivera.
Yeah, I think Rivera is one of those guys that you're going to have to pay attention to. Another guy who's had a pretty good start to the year is Jacob Meyer. Meyer, he's played in 73 minutes in the first few games. He's averaging around 16 a game. He's a 6'2", 192 guard. Comes from Covington, Kentucky. He's a sophomore, and he transferred from Coastal Carolina actually. Just past year, almost instant impact in a system, a new system, different from Coastal Carolina. So I think definitely take a look out for him. If he can keep things going, then they stand a pretty good chance of taking down the Dukes at home. So I think he's definitely a player to look out for as well, alongside Rivera.
Meyer definitely will contribute on offense. It's a good pick, Jack. And I also want viewers to keep their eyes out for J.J. Traynor and David Skogman, who I specifically have down because they both lead the team first and second in rebounds. They've got a big task on their hands, and this one going against Dave Dixon, of course, that'll be exciting to watch down in the paint.
Speaking of which, would that be your Duquesne player to watch? Or are you going in a little different direction here? You're going to make up a good point about Dixon, though.
I do like the transition there, Jack. I would say that Dixon would be my player to watch, but I want to bring up another new guy that we haven't talked about yet in this show. Eli Wilborn down in the paint, very efficient. He's 7 of 10, and I think he's really going to contribute in this one when Dave gets all the attention. He's been quiet. Not a lot of voices talking about Wilborn on this campus, but he has been a prominent name in camp, and I think he's going to get a lot of time moving forward.
I think it was also what I was going to say or bring up at a certain point was the play down low. You've had Wilborn, who has looked good. He's gotten into a little bit of foul trouble, as well as Dixon. It's kind of a match made in heaven, if you look at it that way, but definitely, you have heard through camp that they've been having some good battles, and I think that almost makes them better. And that's a great tandem that Duquesne has to look forward to as the season moves on. I'm going to give you a player to watch, and I say it's going to be Jake DeMichael. I think he started to really look good. He had a little bit of an injury in the offseason. Drew Joyce said he only practiced 3 times, so definitely hasn't had a lot of game experience this season, but last year he came up huge for the Dukes. I mean, he almost saved their season when Day-Day went out. So I really think that DeMichael is going to be asked to play a prominent role going forward. I think that starts tonight. I think it's a matchup where he can get up some threes, and if he can shoot that ball well like he did last year, Duquesne's going to be in pretty good shape to win this game. However, will they? That's a question that me and you are going to answer here in our game picks. We'll have you go first, Dylan. Duquesne DePaul for the second year from Chicago. Who takes the win?
It's going to be the 30th all-time meeting between these sides, Jack, and DePaul is leading 15-14. I think the Dukes make it level this time around. I think they get the 500 on the series. I take the Dukes winning 80-75 in a close one.
So we're both wrong on the first game, right? It's going to be the first time that we're going to be able to, one of us is going to be able to have bragging rights about who has a better record, because I'm going DePaul. I'm going DePaul in this one. I think they have a bunch of good weapons. I think Duquesne's still figuring it out. I don't think that Duquesne has played a full 40-minute game yet. DePaul has, whether that's against bad opponents or whatever you want to say they have. And that's easier to build on as opposed to 2 straight losses for Duquesne now going on the road to Chicago to play a 9 o'clock game. It's going to be tough, and I think that Duquesne will not be able to get the job done. I think DePaul wins this one, but I think it's a close one. But give me DePaul. One of us is going to be 2-1. The other one's going to be 1-2 by the end of Friday nights. We'll see. Regardless, that'll do it for the Duquesne Sports pregame show. For Dylan Pfister, I'm Jack Morgan saying so long and enjoy the game.